ahead and make myself a drink. I can't wait till I'm out of this dead-end job. Just getting on my nerves. I'm so glad to be in my study. All I know is I have to go back tomorrow and do the same thing over and over again. Who is it? Oh. Oh. Come in, sweetie. Come in, sweetie. Come in, sweetie. How was your day today? Good? Oh, you want the story? I promised? Oh, I forgot I promised. Well, I don't know if I can do it tonight, sweetie. I don't... And I know I said I keep my promises, and if I don't, you're a piece of shit. I know. I promise I'll keep the promise. Just not tonight. Okay. You pulled my finger, sweetie. Come on. Right here on Papa's lap. So, what story would you like for me to read? You want a little Red Riding Hood? No? Do you want scary stories to tell in the dark? That's a good one. Oh. Oh, you want a story from the book? I don't know if I should read from the book. There's so many infinite possibilities in the book. Every time you open it up, it's a new story. Are you sure you want the book? Okay. Let me go ahead and pull out the book for you. There we go. The book. Right here. Is this the book you're talking about, sweetie? I know, it's magical. The little metal things, those are all magic. And they equal each infinity of every story. And as you can see, there are many. So let's go ahead and take a look inside the book and see what story we're going to read today. Let's see, what do we have today in the book? Oh, you might like this one. It's a story about your favorite YouTubers, MARKIPLIER and JACKSEPTICEYE. What does it say? It's called I'm Not Crazy. Huh. I'm Not Crazy. It's a weird story, but let's go ahead and begin reading the story, okay? Now, here's chapter 1. No title, just chapter 1. Why are you here exactly? The man looked up at Mark with a raised eyebrow. Mark swaying back and forth on his feet. To guard, I guess. Mark didn't know what else to say. Are you sure? Yeah. I saw the flyer for the job, so here I am. Mark shrugged, and then the man sighed. Standing slowly, walking around the desk to stand before Mark. Tell me, sir, are you aware of what you're guarding? Yes, kind of. Mark bit his lip, squinting and glancing away unsurety. You will be watching Sean McLaughlin. Recognize the name? He rose an eyebrow and Mark swallowed. I know the name, but please, tell me, Mark said. Sean, well, he likes being called Jack. He is a 26-year-old man who, from a young age, has been diagnosed with schizophrenia and a bipolar disorder, making it difficult for him to be around people. He started to explain, walking down a passage, gesturing for Mark to follow him. His family didn't seem too concerned with their son's condition. which was reckless and irresponsible. They let him live on like a normal child, letting him go to school and so on. The children at his school noticed his difference and bullied him, quickly leading to him having a great anxiety and social disorder. He sighed and Mark bit his lip. One day, the bullying became too much for him to handle. He was having hallucinations of what was going on and attacked a child with a pair of scissors, stabbing him repeatedly until the police were able to pull him off, seeing as the teachers couldn't do it. He has been traveling from one institution to another because he cannot be handled whatsoever. So he's here to be made sure that he does not somehow leave. He stopped in front of a large steel door, Mark gaping at it. But now let me tell you, we put up those flyers 3 days ago. You are the fourth person to come and try the job, he said blankly, and Mark rose an eyebrow. Oh? Mark said. The others gave up after 1 hour of being near Sean's room. He said, and Mark gulped. His hands began shaking, stuffing them into the pockets of his jeans. So I asked again, "Are you sure?" He questioned, and Mark coughed before he nodded. The man sighed and turned the door, placing his hand on the handle and pushing it open, revealing a small room where the far end was another steel door with a keypad beside it. Mark frowned, closing the door as the man told him to, his heart rate picking up with each second. "I must warn you, Sean is very loud and spontaneous. Don't be surprised if he won't shut up," he mumbled, as he typed into the keypad before the door clicked open. Beep-boop, boop, 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 boop. Mark walking in after him. It was a large, dark hall. There was a kitchen set up on one side and a monitoring table with several different panels and controls. But what Mark saw first was the large glass room right in the center of the hall. Mark could see a living type of area in the glass room. A man laying on the bed with his eyes closed. Turn the page. That would be Sean. He seems to be sleeping, but you can never be too sure. Now, I wish I could explain what must happen personally, but I'm afraid I cannot. There is a folder on the desk over there which will explain everything you need to know, he said hurriedly, walking towards the door. "Oh, and also Mark," he said, Mark looking up at him with pursed lips. "Don't look, listen, or talk to Sean for too long." "Why?" "He'll drive you to insanity." Mark said, looking back at him, sighing when he saw the door shut. Mark turned back to the glass room, getting a slight fright when he saw the man standing right by the glass wall, staring at him. He had pale skin, blue eyes that seemed to give off the fact that he was not mentally stable, and faded green hair, making Mark frown slightly. He wore a blue hoodie and gray sweats. Mark could see he was very skinny and small, which made him wonder how he had the strength to pull off what he had done. End of chapter 1. It's getting good, right? It's getting really good. Chapter 2. "Oh, hello, Mark. Are you okay? You seem a bit distressed," Sean sang cheerfully, throwing the paper he had just drawn on in the air recklessly, starting to draw a new one. Mark said nothing, walking up to the glass and looking at the pages that were scattered all around the ground. He frowned, seeing the same picture of a green septic eye on each page, sending shivers down Mark's spine. "I said, are you okay, Mark?" Sean suddenly slammed both palms against the glass, spitting out the words through his grit teeth forcing a painfully large smile to spread over his pale cheeks. Mark yelped and jumped back, surprised by the sudden sound and presence of Sean. Fine, Jack, he mumbled out, swallowing thickly. Gulp! Good, Sean smiled and stepped back. Walking to his bed while rolling up his sleeves, Mark looked back down at the picture, staring at them. I see you've met Sam. Sean giggled. Watching Mark. Sam? Mark frowned, looking up at him. Sean lunged to the ground, crawling and snatching one of the pictures, pressing it against the glass, grinning. Sam! He said loudly, and Mark forced a crooked smile. Nodding. Sam likes you, Sean sang, tossing the page in the air, spreading his arms out as he leaned back. Closing his eyes, and he threw his head back. Can you fly, Mark? Sean asked quietly, and Mark frowned. No, Sean. It's a really good story, right? That's a shame. I can. Maybe I'll teach you one of these days. He looked at Mark with a friendly smile for the first time. Mark seeing a calm and warming smile from this maniac. Maybe, Mark nodded, crossing his arms. I like your hair, by the way. He stopped his friendly smile and scrambled to the glass, pressing himself against it with his palms out, staring at Mark. Thanks. I like your hair, too. Mark smiled slightly, nodding to him. Sean giggled childishly, sitting back. It sucks, but thank you for being nice. I need to draw into it again. Sean said, taking some of his faded green locks and pulling it over his eyes to see the color. Draw into it? Mark frowned, and Sean nodded. I draw the green in my hair with Sharpies. Sean crawled into his desk and retrieved the color marker and crawled back, showing Mark. Oh, you seem to have a lot of patience then, Mark said slowly, and Sean laughed, shaking his head. No! I snap it open, and the liquid squirt all over, so I pour it into my hair, he said, grabbing both ends of the marker and pulled down, the pin snapping in half, the watery colors flying all over. Sean holding it over his head and the liquid going over him. Mark stepped back, smelling the ink and cringing. Ah! It's cold! Sean cried out, spreading the color all over his locks, cringing at the feeling of the cold ink on his head. He tossed the pin away, fixing his hair, before he looked up at Mark, smiling. Ta-da! He said, making jazz hands. Making jazz hands, blah, blah, blah. Jazz hands. Oh, found my place. Sorry, sweetie. Mark didn't know what he was thinking when he went to his monitoring set and picked up the cuffs and keys, walking back to the glass room and unlocking it. The smile on Sean's face fell as he stood quickly and walked to the door as it opened. The cold air hitting him, he closed his eyes and breathed in. Until Mark grabbed a hold of his arms and cuffed him to the bed, stepping back. Sean longed for the touch of Mark, liking how his skin felt against his own. He looked up at Mark, smiling. Why'd you do that? This one a good one. Sean asked, and Mark sighed, walking away and returning with a cloth and towel. Sean watched him eerily. Sean watched him carefully as Mark kneeled to his level, bringing the wet cloth to Sean's green-inked face and began cleaning it. Sean seemed baffled and surprised with the care Mark was giving him, and just stared at him. His expression fitting his emotions for the first time in years. Mark picked up Sean's hand, beginning to clean them too, Sean's eyes widening at the fact Mark was touching him. His skin was so soft, Sean liked it. He wanted to feel it for a long period of time. Just feeling Mark's skin was all Sean was thinking of. He looked up at Mark's face, which was concentrated. His tongue stuck out from the corner of his lips, like this. Sean wanted to lean forward and bite his tongue, wondering what it tasted like. He smirked, beginning to imagine all the things he could do to Mark if it weren't for those goddamn handcuffs. It's getting juicy. Mark sighed when he stood and took the cloth and towel out, Sean watching after him. Mark came back and kneeled beside Sean, reaching for the cuffs, then stopped. Realizing that the moment he took those off, Sean might jump at him. Taking the risk, Mark undid them, watching Sean, who sat up, rubbing his wrists. Mark stood and began backing away until Sean grabbed his wrist and slammed him against the glass, staring at him. Thank you for helping me, Marky Moo. I love the care and compassion. Sean whispered huskily into Mark's ears. Mark's eyes were wide as he stared at Sean, watching as he lowered his head to Mark's chest, smiling at the sound of his heart thumping. Oh, listen here. Your heart rate is increasing. Wait, you're afraid? Sean stepped back, staring at Mark with sad eyes, shaking his head and chuckling. No, you couldn't be. You don't think I'm crazy. Sean chuckled and stepped closer to Mark again, slipping his hands under his blue shirt, feeling his muscles underneath flex at his touch. That was a weird sentence. Strong. I like strong. Sean purred deeply, looking up at Mark's shocked gaze. Sean stopped and stepped back, an angered expression crossing his face. His fingers curled into fists, punching the glass wall beside Mark's head, glaring at him. You are fucking scared! I told you, Mark! I'm not crazy! Sean screamed at him, Mark shoving him back, making him stumble over his feet and fall to the ground. Mark rushed out of the room, closing the door and locking it before Sean could stop him, glaring at him. Come back here, Mark! Sean yelled, and Mark rushed to the door, typing in the code into the keypad, rushing out and colliding with the man earlier. Whoa! He gasped. Mark looked down at his name tag. Rodney. Sorry, I need to go, Mark said in a shaky voice, pushing past him and running out the second door, leaving the building and groaning loudly as soon as the fresh air hit his face. Staring up at the star-filled sky, Mark sat back in his car as he looked at the building which he busted out of the night prior, wondering how he could be so mad as to go back and continue his job there. They paid very well, and he needed the money. Without money, how was he going to buy food for his sweetheart Chica? He sighed and climbed out of the car, closing the door and walking in, gripping the straps of his backpack. As he walked in, he saw Rodney speaking with another man, probably to try and take the job. Mark? Rodney seemed surprised when he saw him. Hey! Mark smiled crookedly. I thought you quit. I'm not giving up just yet. That's the end of chapter 2. One more chapter and you have to go to bed, okay? One more chapter and straight to bed, okay? Okay. Chapter 3. Look who came back for more. I don't know how to do an Irish accent. Sean cackled loudly as he stood from his bed, stuffing his hands into the pockets of his jeans, grinning maliciously. Mark's jaw clenched and he dropped his backpack, crossing his arms and approached the glass wall. Listen here, jackass! Mark started at, but Sean giggled, pressing his hands against the glass, staring at him. Jack-a-boy, you mean? Shut the fuck up and listen to me, Mark snapped, and the sly smirk on Sean's face vanished, being replaced with a scowl. You fuck with me, oh, you'll see what happens, you potato piece of shit. I don't condone racism. Mark picked up his bag again, glared at Sean as he went to the kitchen. Speaking of potatoes, can I eat? Sean asked Mark, completely ignoring what Mark had just said. Didn't you eat? Mark frowned, looking at him, placing his hands on his hips. His sweet, juicy hips. Why? Because I want to lick it. He smirked, licking his lips again. Why? Mark asked, watching him in disgust. Your skin. It's so soft. I just want to feel it for the rest of my days. Sean smiled innocently, smirking crookedly. Shut up, Mark said, shifting in discomfort. Come here and make me, he challenges. Mark's eyes widened before he glared at him. You're disgusting. Why? Because I want to fill you up? Sean smirked, and Mark dropped his glass of water, the shards scattering all around the floor as he looked to Sean in shock. He was wondering whether he had heard him correctly. What's the matter, Mark? Sean suddenly became concerned, pressing his nose against the glass. Mark didn't respond as he bent down and picked up the pieces of glass, accidentally cutting himself, the blood rolling down his hands. Sean eyes the crimson substance, closing his eyes and licking his lips, as if imagining what it could possibly taste like. Shit, Mark muttered as he bandages his cut, looking up at Sean, who watched him mockingly. Mark didn't like the way Sean stared at him. It gave him a sickly feeling. Need help? Sean purred, grinning toothily, watching as Mark looked over at him, giving him a glare. Is that a no? Fuck you! Mark spat at him, and he giggled, his tongue tracing over his teeth as he watched Mark. I know you would, and honestly, I wouldn't mind. Sean winked, and Mark felt his stomach churn. He felt almost violated under Sean's continuous stare. Stop it, Mark demanded, and Sean pouted. Tilting his head to the side, strands of his bright green hair falling over his oceanic blue eyes. But how else am I supposed to present myself to you? You don't need to, because I'm not interested. Mark rose his voice and smirked, and the smirk on Sean's face dropped into a scowl. How dare you speak to me as such? He growled lowly, sending shivers down Mark's spine as goosebumps rose at his arms. You speak to me with respect, not as a peasant. Sean banged his fist on the glass, Mark wondering how many punches it could take until the glass would shatter into a million pieces, giving Sean the freedom to do as he desires. Mark said nothing more as he went to the monitoring set and pulled out his phone, speaking with his girlfriend as soon as Sean had abandoned his hissy fit. Why are you smiling at your mobile device? Sean asked in curiosity as he sat up from his bed and walked to face Mark. Why can't I? Mark glanced up at him, giving up on treating him so much like a god and being careful of what he'd say to this madman. Why are you... It's obscure. Sean frowned, placing his hands on the glass as he stared out at Mark. I'm talking to my girlfriend, Mark said, and Sean almost glared at him, biting down hard on his lip. What's her name? Sean smiled through his grit teeth. Jess. Mark finally looked up at Sean, staring at him blankly. How common. Sean sneered, and Mark glared at him, switching off his phone. Jess is so... Wait. What? Mark said through his clenched teeth, giving Sean a warning glare. Jess, so common. Sean rolled his eyes, clasping his hands behind his back and walking around his little room, smirking to himself. It's not like you have a girlfriend, so shut the fuck up. Mark spat, and Sean turned to him with a sinister smile. I used to. Scene, or however you pronounce that. Signy. She left me because of this. He gestured to the glass room he stood in. But then again, I don't need girls. I have you to stare at for the rest of my time here. If you make it, that is. Sean glanced over his shoulder at Mark, grinning madly. You're disgusting. Mark spat yet again, sending a revolted glare at Sean, who giggled and turned to face his body towards Mark. And I love it! Sean cackled madly, placing his hands on his stomach as it arched from his laughter. Mark placed his hands over his ears to try and block out the loud and torturous laughter that echoed throughout the hall. Shut up! Shut up! Mark screamed repeatedly, long after Sean had stopped laughing. Aw, poor Mark. It seems as though you should be the one in here, being called crazy in replacement for me. Sean pouted. Mark glared. But back to the subject of your significant other. Maybe I could make her acquaintance. Sean grinned, and Mark shook his head, standing from his seat. You truly are mentally ill if you seriously believe I'd let the likings of yourself be near my girlfriend. Mark seethed, and Sean stuck his bottom lip out in a pout. Why so harsh, Mark? Do I make you uncomfortable? Sean grinned mischievously. Shut up, Jack! Mark demanded, and Sean shrugged, going to his knees and rolling onto his back, tucking his hands under his head as he grinned up at the ceiling. You'll have to come in here and make me, Markiplier. Sean sat up, looking at Mark with a wide grin and his eyes open wide. What an interesting name. Markiplier. Sean beamed for himself, laying back again. Mark sighed and sat back in his seat, closing his eyes and blocking out Sean's obnoxiously loud voice, unintentionally dozing asleep. Mark! Wake up, you lazy piece of fuck! Sean screamed, Mark's eyes open, groaning at the uncomfortable pain that lay in his side from sleeping in the chair, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Ugh. Finally, good lord! I was almost convinced you were dead. Pity. I would have loved to keep your body, Sean said, looking at Mark. Mark frowned when he saw that Sean had stuck all the pictures of Sam he had drawn to the glass walls, making Mark feel as if each eye were staring at him. Is it not glorious? Ha! I love it. Sam can see all. Sean threw his hands up and spun, sighing dreamily. Mark, you can go now. Rodney opened the door and looked over at Mark. Hello, Rodney. Long time no see. Sean didn't smile. His face was almost portraying a look of memory and fear which made Mark frown. Mark, come on. Rodney pushed as Mark nodded, picking up his bag. Goodbye, my sweet, sweet Markiplier. I'll see you tomorrow, Sean said softly. A hint of sadness hung in his voice, and Mark glanced back at him, seeing his dampened expression. Goodbye, Jacksepticeye. Alright. That was the end now. Sweetie, you gotta go to bed now. You gotta go to bed. I said after 3 chapters you have to go to bed, okay? It was the deal that we had, and you have to go to sleep, okay? Come on, I'll take you. I'll take you. Oop. Let me go ahead and grab my daddy juice. Come on, sweetie. Let's go.